All right,
about
I have to say. Oh, I have to
hello,
click OK, do I?
everybody, and welcome to the third edition of For Those Who Believe, this wonderful podcast that we have collaborated together with all the sons and daughters of the Casa. And indeed, this is for those who haven't been to the Casa and who are interested in the Casa here in Abadiania in Brazil. And today we have a really special guest, a very, very good friend of mine, many, many years, Bob Roemer. Um, and he is a son of the Kaza and from Holland, and he's going to tell his story. And just to kick off, we want to thank Joao de Dias for bringing us all together because we wouldn't be having this podcast if it wasn't for the Casa. So we are very grateful that we have received healing from the Casa in some form or another. Many of us have been here over the years, and many of us have had repeat visits, and many of us have yet to come. So, Bob, tell us your story, how you got here, how you, what brought you here, how you, what you learned here, because there's a big school of life here, and you can take the
Yeah.
floor now, and we can kick
Okay.
off.
Well, I know in the just before we started, we had a chat, and you said, "Bob, no cursing." Um,
Yeah.
this is a big problem for me. Just before I introduce myself, actually, a little anecdote of what happened to me. I was staying in Posada, Amazonas, and I was talking to somebody in the hallway, and I was my usual self like effing this and effing that. And I suddenly looked over at the door, and at reception, the girl at reception was talking to a group of people. And suddenly they all went silent and looked over at me. And I kind of stalled. I felt uncomfortable. So anyway, that was fine. After the group left, I went over to reception and I said to your one, I said, "What was that all about? Are you talking about me?" She says, "No, no, I was just telling about this guy who had an amazing overnight healing. He suffered from Tourette's. And as I was talking, they all looked at you and listened to you. And I just said to them, no, that's not him. So, oh, I still have my Tourette's. Yeah. Anyway,
Love it.
I'm Bob. I'm 64 years old now. Basically, I'm Dutch. I went to Ireland in 1985, just with the shirt on my back, and basically decided to start living there. And I've been here ever since. I've lived in Southern Ireland for about 26 years, and now I'm living just over the border in Northern Ireland for the last I don't know what it is, 10, 12 years. Basically, my story. I was always a guy that always said seeing is believing. Born a Catholic, wasn't born a Catholic, made a Catholic by my parents. Never really believed in the church. To be honest with you, I still don't. And the thing is, my young son Bobby, he was born in 2001. He was the third baby. I had two kids before, and actually, I had Bobby somewhere here in the. Oh, you can't see him.
Oh yeah, we love Bobby. Oh God, it's
I thought that I'd
beautiful.
bring him into the podcast. Anyway, Bobby
He's
was born in
here.
2000.
Hi, Bobby.
He was born in 2001, the third baby, and basically he was as a baby he was fine. After about 18 months, he suddenly started having epileptic seizures. So we panicked, went to hospital, went to all the doctors, tried medications. I even spent a lot of money to even fly into London to the Ormond, is it Ormond Street Great Children's Hospital
Yeah, that's
to get him investigated. And to make a long story short, there wasn't anything they could do for him.
oh,
And every time he had a bout of seizures, we ended up in our local hospital, put him on a drip overnight. The seizures would stop. We'd bring him home, and a week, 10 days later, it would basically be the same thing. This got worse, and I think he was about nearly 3 years of age, and the doctors said at one hospital visit, "Listen, his brain is swelling these days so much that anyway, we don't think he's going to make the night. And if he does, then we'll give him a few weeks, maybe 2 months to live. But at the end of the day, it's just end of the road." So we didn't know what to do. I had all the money in the world in those days, and I had nowhere to go. And I highly frustrated. I couldn't get the guy fixed.
Yeah.
Three things happened, which I suppose a lot of people would say, well, that's the fluffy guys, basically sending us a message. Number one, I read a story about Brazil, actually in one of our local Irish papers, about a man that was miraculously healed. Something I never do, yeah, but I did. I tore out the article and I brought it home to show to my at the time wife. She said absolutely no interest. She says our Bobby is not leaving the 5 mile radius of our local hospital. So flying him to Brazil is a no-no. The second thing that happened, I was talking to one of my suppliers on the phone, and they always used to ask me, how is your son Bobby doing? And I told this lady, I mentioned the guy in Brazil, and she says, I think I know somebody that has been there. And it turned out that she contacted this person in Cork, and this person had been there. So I arranged to meet this woman halfway in the middle of Ireland somewhere for a 2-hour conversation. And the third thing that happened was the RTE documentary that was made at the time, in which you were as well, big feature. It suddenly appeared on television, and my wife at the Times actually rang me and says, "Quick, switch on the television. I think this guy you were talking about is on." So I watched the documentary, and basically after that we had a conversation, and we said, right. The only decision we have to make is, if Bobby dies on the way over to Brazil, will we accept responsibility? And we said, well, we have nothing to lose, so we went.
Good.
So we arrived in Brazil. Bobby got a few spiritual operations. We were there for 2 weeks. No real immediate change in Bobby. But I remember the last day that we were there, on the Friday, we were flying home the next day. Bobby still had seizures. And I said, you know what, I'm going to queue, see the medium in the afternoon and ask him to help us to get Bobby home because he was still as bad as when we brought him in. So the only thing I had asked the entities that week, basically, if you can't cure him immediately, will you make his life more bearable? And the entity had said, we will. So anyway, the last day I pushed him into the second timeline and asked the medium, will you help us get home safely? And he just waved his hand and he says, just use the water. So I went out disappointed, went to my wife and said, she says, well, what did he say? He says, well, waste of bloody time. He says, use the water. So I said, well, that was a waste of time. We're on our own.
Still in here, yeah.
So the next morning, anyway, in the taxi on the way to the airport, we were in the taxi for about 20 minutes, and Bobby already had his first seizure. She was sitting on the back seat holding him. I was in the front. And she says, Jesus, he already has his first seizure. How are we going to get home? Because our trips were 26 hours, 3 plane rides. Right. So I just leaned back and I said, try the water. So she got a little spoon and she put the water, the Casa water, on his lips and he fell asleep.
Wow.
So she says, I think he's settling and he's asleep now. I said, great. I said, try and keep him asleep for as long as you can. And to make a long story short, the whole plane ride home, 26 hours, every time Bobby woke up, she would give him a bit of yogurt or whatever he would be able to take. And immediately a couple of teaspoons of the water afterwards. And as soon as he would take the water, he would fall sound asleep. He had no seizures whatsoever on the way home. Brilliant. So that was basically, the power of the water that absolutely just astonished us.
Amazing. And to this day.
To this day, I still have the water.
I have it. Yeah, I drink it all the time.
It's amazing stuff. So we asked the entities as well how fast or how often should we come back. And he said, it's up to you. They never tell you what to do. They always let you make up your own mind. As they say, the entities will give you the tools, but you have to do the work. Exactly. So we just decided, okay, what do we feel is right for Bobby? So we said, you know what, we'll twice a year. So since then, we've been back twice a year, or we went back twice a year. And so at the moment, as we speak, I think I've been there 16, 17, 18 times. I don't know. But I met the first visit, obviously, I met you there. And Cafe Central.
Great. Yeah.
And, after I seen my first visit, obviously, we seen one or two miracles, and I was just astonished. I said, how the hell is this all possible?
Yeah.
So I asked you, and you said, well, that's the spirits. And I said, so they exist? I said, that's amazing. And obviously, after everything that I had seen there, I kind of thought, there is no other option. I mean, I have to believe that this is actually happening. So I didn't go all religious straight away. I basically, the way I am is I said, right, I want to find out about this. I find this interesting. I want to find out what's going on. If the spirits exist, I would like to learn about them. I'd like to know what it's like up there. I'd like to know, the ins and outs of life after death. So I remember you told me, actually, before I went home, buy this book of Allan Kardec, the Spirits book. Read that and come back to me. So I bought the Spirits book. I started reading, and and I found it all very, very interesting.
Yeah.
The word I always used in those days was fascinating. I found it all very, very fascinating. Obviously delighted that I have my own experience of believing that there is a spirit world, but after that,
Sure.
I want to know more about this crowd. So basically, so the last, I suppose, 20 years I have been what they call studying, reading. I'm at the moment, I'm reading books about your soul's plan. How do we plan our trip to Earth, and why and how and everything else. So again, very interesting stuff. I just have a look at my list here because
I just wanted to ask you, Bob, do you think you had a spiritual awakening here and it put you on your spiritual path? Abadiania. Yeah. If you hadn't come to Abadiania, you may be in some different place right now.
This is it. I mean, just even jumping to the end as regards Bobby. Bobby was born in 2001. He was supposed to be dead in 2003, maybe 2004. He died, but he died in 2016. So the entities, basically, the way I look at it, that's why I have no problem dealing with it with his death. I mean, the entities gave him an extra 13 years. That's the 13. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Basically an extra 13 because 12 because he died when he was 15.
So he really did extend his life by coming to Brazil. Really.
Yeah,
I spoke. Beautiful soul. I mean, he taught us so much.
I think he decided to stay. This is and I can tell you a few more stories about my personal experience with some people. Bottom line is, I think when we're destined to have a short life, then we're going to have a short life, and nobody can change that. If you're destined to have a long life, you're going to have a long life.
Exactly.
The only thing is, there is a little bit of wiggle room there.
Please, one more year.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Bobby had, I suppose, died when he was 3 or 4. We dragged him all the way, to Brazil, and we asked basically the entities there, keep him alive. And they kind of said, shit, what are we going to do now? Because this guy has to die. You know what? If there is a good reason why he should stay, then we let him stay. Wow. So I think the good reason was that he taught me, his mother, and a lot of people around us, basically, about the spiritual part in us. I mean, it changed my life. Basically,
and also love. I mean, there was a great love emanating from him, and the way you guys worked with him as well, where you were a shining example of how to love your family, your son who is sick. I mean, it was you're such an inspiration, Bob, and I mean that from my heart. I'm not just bigging you up. I saw you when you weren't looking.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, looking back at my life, I was very well to do, to put it mildly. I had everything I ever wanted in life. I mean, I could basically, buy whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted, and I had everything. Yeah. And suddenly somebody gives me a sick son that I couldn't fix, not with all the money in the world. So it was a bit of a kick in the teeth.
Big lesson.
Big lesson, yeah. Obviously, I chose that lesson before I came here, but
Sure.
it was a shock to the system. But at the same time, on hindsight, it has been a beautiful experience. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world.
That's amazing.
But that's always the thing with the spirit world. Then at the end of the day,
Grateful. You're
you're in the
full of
midst of something.
gratitude. It's a lot
Yeah,
of
when you're in the midst of an event, you don't understand what's going on, and you kick, roar, and shout, and you look up at the sky and say, "Why me?" And then a few years later, when you figure it all out, you kind of smile and say, I usually say, "You bastards! I didn't see this coming," and and you laugh. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same. I was in the furniture business, and my back packed in years ago just by showing off and thinking you can live more than you can. So I was one of those back sufferers that was told by his doctor, "Listen, we can operate, but there's a 50% chance you land in a wheelchair. So just suffer on and keep living the way you are, like the rest of the world that has a back problem." We were, I don't know, on our 6th or 7th visit. And at one stage I thought, you know what, I'm going to ask for something for myself. So I asked the entity, would he fix my back? And he says he would. So I said, right, I'm going for the whole experience. I want, the operation on stage, and thinking that he was just going to turn me around, get me face the wall and do the famous 3 cuts with a sharp knife on my back. Anyway, I went on stage and I got the flipping nose job, the scissors up the nose, which I didn't see coming. Yeah. And but anyway, they fixed my back. I mean, this operation has been about 15 years maybe.
Yeah.
And my back today is still the way it is, when I was 18.
Wow.
And at the time I thought as well, I was well to do. I really didn't have to do any physical work, in my life anymore. And I thought, why would they fix my back? Is there a reason for it? Well, now I know that there was a reason for it. At the time, they knew that my life was going to fall apart. I was going to lose all my money, and I basically had to go back to work again from scratch. Now looking back again, I'm thinking, you guys seen all of this coming. Because I know they wouldn't have fixed my back if there was no need for it, if there was no purpose.
Yes.
This is, I suppose, one of the things we learn with the spirit world. We can ask anything we want, but as they say, you don't get what you ask, you get what you need. And this is...
You nailed it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and this is basically the same in my case. I knew that I was asking for something that I didn't really need at the time, but it turned out I did need it, and that's why they gave it to me.
Yeah.
So again, on hindsight, years later, we always smile and say, now I know why, they did do that or why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've basically, I mean, I've had so many personal experiences. I often say to people, I could write a book about my own personal experiences over the years. And then people say, well, why don't you? And then I always think, well, who would be interested?
I'd love it. I'm sure many people would be inspired, especially now in this day and age when there's such a need for spiritual growth and also belief in another dimension, because we're not alone, Bob. Let's face it, we are not alone on Earth. They're
absolutely
everywhere.
not. Absolutely everywhere. Not. I mean, they're everywhere.
Benevolent beings to help us.
They're right beside you. It's a one thing that I liked about, say, Alan Kardec's book, when they asked the entity, you are an entity, you are one energy. When we take a photograph of a spirit, we get this spirit orb, a circular orb, which is a source of energy. So absolutely. If you guys basically in your dimension are just one entity, one energy, how come that when I call you, you're immediately, instantly right beside me, listening to me? But if my granny in the south of Spain would call you, you're instantly beside her. Can you guys divide yourselves up? And I thought that's an interesting question. And the entity actually said, look at the sun, he said. Look at the sun. The sun is one entity, one energy.
Great,
But
great thing to say.
when you're here in Ireland, you can receive the sun rays, and when you're in the south of Spain, at the same time, you can receive the sun rays. And this is the way he explained the way they work. Well, this is the bit I'm interested in, the science behind it.
Thinking here. Oh, yeah, keeps you up at nighttime thinking.
It's the same as when the Entee made me a son of the Casa after about 5 or 6 years. And I left and I went to Fruities and I said to everybody, make me a fucking son of the Casa. Me, I mean, I'm the last person you want to be fucking using for that spiritual crap. And
you are the one that they will use because you're the most unlikely one, Bob.
Yeah,
it was
what somebody said to me. Well, somebody actually said to me at one stage, well, you're destined to talk to all those non-believers that are a bit like you know, blunt and just, you know, and don't believe in all the hairy fairy stuff. So I said, yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense. And I mean, I've had a friend here in Ireland, and he actually said to me, he says, only because it comes out of your mouth, Bob, I tend to believe it. If anybody else would have told me, I would not have believed it. And I said, well, okay, so that's my destiny then.
Because you're such an unbeliever to start with. I mean, I remember when you came to Abadiania first, it was all new. Like everybody, you know, you don't know what to expect, and you want the instant healing, you want the instant cure. You don't realize that healing is a work in progress, and it's a lifetime's work. And even though Bobby's not with us anymore, look how much teaching he gave us and how much love there was. And we miss his physical presence, but you're right, he did get extra time. And also his spirit he's with us, but he just doesn't have a body. And that's hard to get your head around as a son. I can't imagine having to let go of a son. That was something
it was well, how would I say it? It was surprisingly easy. Actually, you know, after he passed, it's hard, but at the same time, because I wasn't just a little bit of a believer, I just knew straight away that the guy was standing beside me, you know, and he's sitting here beside me. If you're a strong believer in the other world and genuinely believe, then it's not a problem. The only thing that I just know is it'll be a few years before I see you snout again. And the only thing I'm thinking, even this morning, I was sitting downstairs, you know, making a wee list for this podcast. Good. And I was writing down the dates, you know, born in 2001. And I thought, fuck, he's 23 today.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
You know, and I immediately thought if he was sitting here beside me being 23, I bet he's 6 foot tall. And I just tried to picture his face of what he would look like today.
Very handsome. No more than yourself, Bob, you know, tall, strong, you know, he was really something. He had a lot of energy, and also his presence was very formidable. He was amazing. And he's amazing because he is there without the body and helping you.
Yeah. The funny thing is, in the old days, we always walked around Abadiania, you know, with Bobby in the buggy. And I went back to Abadiania, what was it, last November last?
Yeah, I met you here. October.
Basically, I walked into Fruities, and the same girl, well, she's an older woman now, but the same girl that was always there, you know, she runs Fruities at the moment, kind of, she was still there.
Yeah, Marcia. She's lovely.
It's Marcia.
Yeah.
And I said to Marcia, you know, do you remember me? And obviously she says no. You know, she's probably thinking, you know, 50,000 people, and he wants me to remember him.
Yeah.
And and I said to her, I used to come here with my son in a small buggy, and she says, oh. I said, Bobby. Oh, she says, Bobby. Straight away. Oh, and she was all over me, and she just everybody remembered Bobby, you know. And I thought, isn't that amazing? I mean, from all the people that woman would have met, once I mentioned Bobby, she jumped straight away.
Absolutely.
Like, you know,
he was a shining light. I mean, everyone loved him and was attracted to his light as well. I mean, even in the Casa, people would be over, you know, sort of talking to you and looking lovingly at Bobby, who was very beautiful, big doe eyes and So
yeah,
such a high presence, you know. I
yeah,
mean, he was something else. I
yeah, yeah.
just loved him, you
Yeah,
know.
I suppose what made him different, or different, special, different. The guy couldn't talk. For the people that don't obviously didn't know Bobby, he couldn't talk, you know. So he just made noises. So the thing with Bobby is that if he made noises, you didn't really know what he wanted. You had to try and figure it out. So it's not that people could talk to him and have a conversation with him and that he could say things back. He wasn't able to speak.
Yeah.
So you just have to go by his reactions and actions and hand movements and whatever. But
Yeah, he was a magnet of love. And also,
yeah,
he
yeah,
brought you to the Casa just as my
mm,
sister brought me to the Casa. And I thought I was
yeah,
going to the Casa for my sister, but actually, they
yeah.
got the whole lot of us. You know,
She
hook,
saved your
line, and
life.
sinker. I'm still here. You're still coming here. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so they were looking for us too. So
yeah,
everyone is welcome to the banquet.
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, when I look back at the years now, I actually I count myself very lucky. Because the world is full of people that say, "Oh, I hope there's something after we die, but I don't really want to die. I'm afraid of it." Whereas I'm one of the very few lucky ones that has personally experienced kind of, you know, the spirit world up close.
Yes.
Uh, I mean, I remember my mother-in-law at the time. She's a Catholic, you know, very religious, and you know, when I came back the second visit, she says to me, she says, "In your words, Bob, now, explain to me exactly what it's like up there." And I said, "Well, you know how they talk about the gates of heaven?" And she says, "Yeah." Well, I said, "I was ringing the fucking doorbell." I said, "I was
Okay.
that close." And she
And
says, "Ah, I get the picture."
that shut her
So,
up.
yeah, well, she immediately got the picture. You know, I said, "That's how close, you know, you get. You know, it's the energy. You know, the energy nearly is like a portal. You
Yeah, and
know,
not you can't see with these eyes. You know, it's what you
no,
cannot
no,
see that is so
yeah,
important. These eyes see very little, you know, and
absolutely.
tunnel vision. And I think
This
that's
this is the
maybe why
point.
you
Yeah,
got the scissors up the nose because it goes into your pituitary gland and opens your third eye. So there's this
yeah,
explosion
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
consciousness. I got
yeah,
it as
yeah.
well, and it changed my life forever. Not immediately. I didn't notice immediately because it was
Mm,
a slow burner. But then I suddenly started
yeah,
realizing that my whole world and awareness had just lifted higher and higher. So your vibration just
yeah.
exploded.
You see, I think the thing is, most people that go there, as you said, are looking for instant healing, and when they
Yeah.
don't get healed or they don't
Fix
get
me.
anything, any physical signs, they get frustrated. I remember I sat there many of times in the hall, kind of looking up at the ceiling, saying, "What's wrong with you guys? I mean, for fuck's sake, there's an 85-year-old just walking past me, and you fixed him, and here I am with my young son in a buggy, and you won't fix him. I mean, what's you know."
Yeah, what's the
What's the big
story?
deal there? I mean, what's, you know, and then you get to the point that you say, you know, is God cruel or something, or what the hell is going on? It's
Yeah.
only, I suppose, in time that you learn that, yeah, the Casa was always called the spiritual hospital, but their healing starts at the source. When you go into a normal hospital, they cut you open and they go from the outside in. They can only cut away what looks rotten, and everything else they don't see it, they leave it there. Whereas the spirits, they start at the source.
Yes.
So while they're doing their work, they might be doing their work for 2 or 3 years, but by the time actually the work becomes visible on the outside, you might be 2 or 3 years on. You know, that's the difference. They work in reverse,
Yes,
and
exactly.
you
And
know,
it's subtle too. So, you know, you don't get
yeah,
an instant explosion of like, oh, suddenly I'm really enlightened and spiritual, and now I'm going to go out
yeah,
and change the world. It is
yeah, no, no,
a
no, yeah,
patience. You know,
yeah.
patience
And
wins all things, you know?
even the instant healings. I mean, I wrote down a few. I have a book full of, you know, miracles that I experienced personally. But even the people that get instant healing, you know, I don't know what's wrong with some people. I mean, to give an example, a friend of mine, Lorcan, he was basically in intensive care. He had had a brain bleed. His heart and his lungs were half eaten away by cancer. The doctors had given up on him. They basically says, if Lorcan gets a seizure in the middle of the night, that'd be the end of it. And it would be kinder for him if that happened. We sent this picture. Well, I sent this picture to Brazil at the time because his family wouldn't, they weren't really in on the Casa. To make a long story short, this was Christmas week. The guy suddenly, he survived. He got better. He got better to the point that they said, we can truck him now by ambulance to his local hospital and he can die there in peace with his family around him. He came to the local hospital. We kept working on him, got him the water. Basically, that's all he could take, a teaspoon of water every hour. But I had somebody in his family that was actually giving him the Kaza water. 6 weeks later, the guy basically was so well, he was allowed to go home. And he walked around the house with, what do you call it? A pack, painkiller pack, a morphine pack.
Yes.
And a few weeks later, he didn't need the morphine, and he was a member of the Aero Club at the time, the same as me. He started taking the herb tablets. And one day, a few weeks later, I walk into the bar of the Aero Club, and there was Lorcan sitting with a pint of Guinness in front of him. And I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he says, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You came back from the fucking dead. You're on herb tablets, and now you're drinking alcohol." He says, "Bob, sure, one pint can't do any harm." And I'm kind of thinking, what is wrong with people? I mean, the guy experienced massive miracles, and he still broke the rules.
It is a discipline, and you have to give something up. There is some sort of, no alcohol. It's just the Passiflora now is only no alcohol. Before it was no chilies, which was a killer, and no bananas and no pork. And at one stage, it was no eggs. So there has to be some sort of restrictions on your discipline to make you conscious of the healing. So, and alcohol interferes with your system,
Well, it interferes with the healing anyway.
And it brings in obsessive spirits. So you don't want that. So, yeah.
Well, that's the one thing actually I wanted to talk about as well. Everybody's talking about, the spirits and, some people believe more than others. Okay, that's all very fine. Everybody for themselves. It's the same reason I went back to the Casa there last year. I was worried that the atmosphere wouldn't be the same because there is no Joao standing there or sitting there in his chair anymore. But I arrived there and I just found the energy I felt I have never felt in the years previously.
Correct.
It was just so strong, it nearly made me flipping dizzy. And I always thought as well that in the current room, the energy came from all those people together in the current room, that you needed that amount of people to generate a certain amount of energy. Yeah. Well, I was in the current room with, I think, 6 or 7 people, and fuck me, I was falling over with energy. So the energy there is so strong today that I'm so delighted I went on that trip last year.
Yes, I know, and it was good to see you and to see how you reacted to the energy. I mean, there's always the waterfall, there's the crystal beds, which I see behind you there. Great tool.
Every house should have one.
I think every house should be, have at least one, especially if it's a big family too. Because they're amazing, and you can just turn them on without anybody under them. I see you have pictures under yours there, and you can put them on. And
I just if I get somebody sick, I put their photograph under it, because I use that as my big white telephone to God, or in this case to the Casa. So if I have somebody sick, I basically say, listen, I'll print off a picture and basically put it under the bed.
Yeah.
And and again, some people don't believe in it, other people do. It doesn't matter. I mean, my own father doesn't believe in it, even though the entities fixed him twice.
Exactly.
And he still thinks it's a coincidence. The last time, basically, had his picture under the bed, and the guy says, "Fuck, the pain in my leg is gone again." He used to wake up every night in the middle of the night with a pain in his leg, which was kind of like a trapped nerve, but he'd have to get out of bed and basically walk it off before he could go back to sleep again.
God.
And anyway, we fixed that. Well, the entities fixed that before. And the last time I was in Holland, He says, you know that pain I had a few years ago on my leg. He says, it's back again. I said, well, I can send you a picture over the ground. He says, don't worry about it. So when I come home, I thought, you know what? I stick his picture under the bed. And a week later, I was talking to him, and he says, gee, such a coincidence. A week after you were in Holland, he says, the pain in my leg went away again. And I said, that's a coincidence, isn't it? I just leave it like that.
He's better off not knowing, Bob. You'll freak him out.
No, that's the thing. There's no point in trying to convince people. In the beginning, when you come away from the Casa, you're so excited with everything that you've seen. As I often say to people, that fella that used to walk around, you mightn't know him, but 2,000 years ago, is this guy called Jesus. And he's walking around fixing everybody all around him. I said, well, I just went to this guy last week, and he's doing the same flipping thing.
Yeah, well, he always reminds us,
people look at you.
God who heals. The medium was an instrument in God's hands, and he had all these helpers, all these spirits. This Dr. Gusto, I have he's amazing. He was
no sense of humor though.
He's no sense of humor. And he's disciplined. He's like, I told you to do this and you didn't, and you're coming back for the same thing.
Yeah, but that's the bloody Germans for you anyway. There's no sense
they're
of humor.
everywhere. They see everything, I know. He's everywhere.
I give you a story. I give you an example about that. Actually, I remember, I was over with a friend at Abadiania because this guy, he had his brother dying. So I said to him, you know what? I was well-to-do at the time. He was well-to-do. I rang him. I said, I want to fly over to Brazil for your brother. But he said, when? I said, today, tomorrow, Monday, whenever I can. But I said, I'm just ringing you because I thought if a blood relative of him would come with me, it might make a stronger connection if we did surrogate operations for the guy. And he thought about it, and he says, I'll go with you. So the two of us, hopped on a plane 2 days later and ended up in Abadiania. He knew nothing about the place because on the way to the airport from my house at the time, he hopped in the car and he says, right, start talking. Where the hell are we going? And I said, we're going to Abadiania to this place, blah, blah, blah. And after about 20 minutes, he sat sideways. And I said to him, listen, I can drop you off here. You can take the bus home. And he says, no, I'll give you unto Longford. This was in Boyle. He says, I'll give you unto Longford, which was the next town we were passing to. So anyway, we made it to the airport and we went with the two of us. So the day before we arrived on the Tuesday. So on the Tuesday afternoon, we walked around the Casa grounds and I said, well, there's the toilets, there's the gift shop. That's where we're going to queue up tomorrow. And I was walking around and just basically being my own self, like fecking this and fecking that. And so he turned around to me at one stage and he says, if we're on holy ground, he says, do you not think we should be a little bit more respectful? And I said, feck that. I said, listen, the 6,000 fluffy guys up there, right? 3,000 have no sense of humor. They can feck off. And I said, the other 3,000 with a sense of humor, we'll use them. And he said, oh, well, if that's the way it is here, it's fine. So the next day, we stood in line to see the entity. And I remember he was writing one of his prescriptions, and it was my turn next. And he looked up and he went like that. And I knew exactly why he laughed. That was the comments I made the day before. And I laughed at him. And I thought, yeah, you guys do have a sense of humor.
Yes. And they know everything, before they know everything. Get there.
They know everything, yeah. But I even believe that they do like an occasional laugh. We're all taking, the spirit world, it's a serious thing. But they were like you and me. Yeah. Then they died, they end up fluffy. So now they're fluffy guys, but still the same personalities, the same sense of humor.
The same, yeah. We just happen to have these bodies that are testing us, and we're still on the plane of Earth, and it's tough now on the planet, and a lot of people need the Kaza energy or some sort of spiritual awakening, or the Kaza. For me, is my spiritual home, and that's why I keep coming back here. And for you too, being back here last year was great to see you here, and you were also very surprised that the energy was still actually higher and different, clearer,
much
more
stronger,
fluid, and in a way different, but a higher vibration, because less people and more quiet and more intense, really.
It is,
we
definitely.
really did depend on another person. We gave our power to a medium who is human like us. And with respect to João de Dias, he did amazing work, and he showed up for work and said yes to his mission. But we were really not seeing him. It was just there in the chair. It was all the hundreds of thousands of spirits working around him, and many of them, you know, Christian, many of them from all persuasions. I heard you earlier saying about not being, you know, Catholic or whatever. I get that, because, you know, now it's spirit. It's about the spirits and the spirit world, and it's not. It's we're all the same. It doesn't matter our belief systems, or it's not about religion at all, because
that's it. I mean,
all
when you look at
lead to God, or lead to this source, or whatever you want to call God. I loved it, what I learned there here all the time. Sacred Trinity of innumerable names. And I see you have a triangle behind you there. I had one around my neck last night, but it flew off.
Well, look, I got this one from you, actually, for all the people that actually don't know. Actually, I should tell you this. This is what kind of a fucking misplaced angel you are.
God.
A good few years ago, actually, this is not for you, this is for people that are watching this. A good few years ago, we used to go through triangles like wildfire, because you buy one in the gift shop and it tarnishes after 3 weeks, and then it falls apart and it's gone. And at one stage I said to you, I'd love to get a gold one, something that lasts. And you went to the local goldsmith in the village and got a price for me. I think it was £180 sterling at the time. And I said, well, listen, Grainne, I'm kind of broke these days. No, leave it. And there was no more about it. And a few months later, you visited Ireland, and you came to my house and you said, I have something for me. And there it was. You bought me the golden triangle out of your own pocket.
I love it.
And I mean, still to this day, it shows you it's those things that make you special, you know.
And also we're all in it together, so why not, you know? And it's a great protector. The sacred geometry, you know, the whole universe is made of triangles. And also faith, hope, and love. If we can live that creed, we are well on the way to heaven. Well, you know, we might have a few bumps on the way, but also it's a great reminder of the sacredness of the universe, and everything is made from triangles, you know, the Trinity, you know.
Well, talk about the Trinity. Yeah, remember, I mean, I arrived here in Northern Ireland, as I said, you know, kind of depressed, broke, and my whole life had fallen apart. Then I decided to pick myself up, and I thought, you know what, with my new partner, we buy a field, we stick in a caravan, and I'll start again. I had my own 2 hands, and I'll start building a house. So we looked around for a piece of land, and we found this old farmhouse on 2 acres, and we said, we tried to bid for that, and it just, you know, the bidding went through the roof, and we walked away, and we were very disappointed. So we started driving around, and we suddenly found this site for sale, and we just fell in love with the site. It just felt right, you know. Well, you know the site, obviously. You know, when you walk onto the land, even initially, something about it just felt right. So we said we want to buy that, and we went through the process of buying it, and then we found out what was the address. It was number 111. And I just laughed, and I said, I don't fucking believe this. Number 111. That's my
pictures of it. Your post box 111. I could not. I was gobsmacked. But there is something. But it's just like sacred.
As if the fluffy guys up there are just having a laugh with you. You know.
I know.
Like, well, there you go.
What an amazing address to have. And as soon as I went there for the first time, I knew, even though, you know, you have a mobile home and then you planted a tree for Bobby, and I put the triangle under the tree and a crystal, you know, the crystals always help as well because they hold such huge vibration for the planet and memory. And I always went to the tree and remembered Bobby, and I always felt such a warmth going to visit you. To this day, sure, I was only there a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's only because you get fed.
And you know how to feed. You see, your heart is open now, Bob. You know, you're not a big, you know, giant for nothing. You know, your energy and the house is amazing.
Yeah, it's
from nothing. You know.
Yeah, the thing is, just for people out there, I mean, yeah, I was well-to-do, lost everything, marriage fell apart, business fell apart, Bobby died. It was like
didn't look good.
No, it didn't look good. I landed in a hospital twice in the month of September with a suspected heart attack, which, lucky enough, it wasn't. It was just stress. It was just my body telling my head, listen, enough is enough. So I decided to lock myself away in this field, live in a caravan, and as a kind of a therapy thing, I suppose, I just said, you know what, I'll build my own house, but as in with my own hands, I'll just start and I see how far I get. And I suppose 6 years later now, it's, you know, it's finished. And the therapy works.
Place. You know, I mean, the energy there is special. Your doors are from a monastery. That's what's attracting all the energy, you know.
Yeah. No, it's just, you know, but it was good therapy for me as well, because it got me, you know, away from people, just some me time, working with my hands. And basically, I think even spiritually, looking back now, it was all part of my path. I just didn't like it at the time. I was kicking and screaming, saying my whole life is falling apart.
Yes.
On hindsight now, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, today I'm a relaxed guy. You know, happy. I sleep 12 hours a night, and well, that's long COVID I have at the moment. But
good, you get a lot of rest.
And it's amazing, you know, how sometimes your life falls apart. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that say my life is falling apart. I think it's all part of the plan.
Yes.
And the thing is, there are hurdles. They throw hurdles at you, which you've actually chosen for before you came to Earth yourself. So you can't blame anybody.
Well, and painful endings are bright new beginnings, really. And you know, when my sister passed away in 2016, no more than yourself, a lot of people.
I didn't pass away in 2016.
Well, she kind of lost her physical body, but you know.
Yeah. No, you said like yourself.
Well, Bobby, you lost Bobby, and well, we didn't lose him, but they just moved on to another dimension. And a lot of people in my family, and also in, you know, in general in the world, said, oh, so there's nothing really happening in Brazil. You know, your God can't save lives. And I said, lives are not meant to be saved. It's about the lessons we're learning in the school of life, and everybody's going to pass on at some stage. So it just depends. Some people are going faster than others. So that was a huge letting go and learning. And people thought, oh, the cure is physical here in Brazil, but they're everywhere.
The physical healing is only after the spiritual healing. You know,
exactly.
when you have an illness, it usually is spiritual first. You know, and most illnesses, you know, start in the stomach, and you know, but that's because spiritually, you know, mentally, spiritual and mental is kind of, you know, goes hand in hand as well.
Yeah, you know, and only death of the physical body is the cure in a lot of cases, because the lessons have been learned, and it's time to shuffle off your mortal coil and go back to your creator. And of course, I'm a great believer in reincarnation, because I have met, I've had experiences here that I can only explain by being on the planet before. I'm not going to get into them now, because I have a lot of deja vu here. A lot of people I've met here have opened my whole spiritual path. And I just know I've been on the planet before. I mean, I count potatoes, you know, so being Irish, I must have been died in the famine or something, you know.
It's the same as I often say to people. I mean, we have to, you know, Earth is just a school. Exactly. We come here to learn. It's the planet of opposites. You know, every minute of the day, our choices. You know, will I turn left? Will I turn right? Will I drink tea? Will I drink? You know, don't drink tea. Will I go to work? Will I not go to work? Will I talk to that person or will I not? You know, this is the school of opposites, and because it's a school of opposites, we have to make choices every minute of the day. Will I go left or will I go right? And, you know, the end of the day, this is the bit that we don't know. There's supposed to be a path. It's all, you know, it's like a play that plays out. The people around you are all, you know, most of them were your friends in the spirit world. They actually have agreed to play this play with you.
Yes, an illusion.
I just hope that my ex-wife isn't part of that group, because I have to face her again when I go back. But
it's hard. It's hard.
You know, that's the thing. That's when I say to people, you know, we live in the spirit world. You come to Earth to do a bit of practicing, you know, your theory, the theory bit that you've learned up there. You have to bring that into practice and experience it before you're allowed to go to the next module. If you meet a next door neighbor that is a nasty old bugger, you know, he's probably a guy that's just 2 classes behind you, you know, 2 more lifetimes, and he is where you are today. You know, we're here because we want to become better people, better spirits, better persons, and the only way to do that is in, you know, to practice and to experience.
Yeah,
you know, that's the whole game. No.
It's all an illusion, but I know that when I went to the Casa first, I didn't know anything about Saint Ignatius of Loyola, Dom Ignacio in Portuguese, and it is the Casa name. And I learned so much about him. I even went to Spain to where he was born and where he's in the cave since that, and I would never have done that had I not come to the Casa. But he certainly is amazing character. And he is very present, and he also they have it on the walls of the Casa, to love and to serve in all things for the greater glory of God. If we could live by love and service, which you are very good at, because you often, countless times over the years, said, I have another victim for you, Grainne. And you send pictures of people saying, oh, can you get some herbs, bring them to the Casa, do surrogate interventions, which I was happy to do in love and service, because we rise by lifting others, and you know, we're all part of the same oneness. So if our brothers and sisters are suffering, we need to help them, and that's just true love. Not
well, that's it. And you know, you get a kick out of helping somebody. You know, that's what I found. I mean, when I had my business years ago, people used to come in to my office with pictures. You know, the word got around locally that I had a direct line to God. So people would drop in pictures of Granny, Grandad, the whole shebang, and I used to send them off. And then if somebody came back to me and said, "No, Granny is fixed," or "Grandad's walking again," I think, "Feck, great." You know, I used to get a great kick out of it.
Absolutely. You know, and then a lot of people just say, oh, they wouldn't connect it to the Casa, but it doesn't really matter, because
doesn't matter. No.
We awaken. You don't have to come to the Casa for spiritual awakening. It can happen anywhere. And even people whose names, they've never been to the Casa, whose names have been written on a small white piece of paper and put in the triangle at the Casa, have received miracles. And, you know, gratitude is a magnet for miracles. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, you know, this is what I used to do over the years when, you know, I was in Sligo at work and you were in Abadiania, and I used to email you so many pictures over the years.
Easy.
I mean, you know, I wrote a few others down. I had neighbors, for instance, across the road from me, and she had 3 kids, 2 little boys and a girl, and both boys had cystic fibrosis. Basically, you know, they tend to live to 15, 16, 17 years of age. Anyway, with the help of the Casa, the 2 boys were cured, fully cured of cystic fibrosis.
That's amazing.
She was told not to get pregnant again, because the doctors basically said, if you have a girl, she mightn't have it. If you have a boy, 100% for sure, guaranteed, he will have cystic fibrosis. And what did she do? As humans do, they never listen. She got pregnant again. So I send a picture to you of her being pregnant, asking basically the entities to help her. Baby was born, it was a boy, and he had no cystic fibrosis.
Amazing.
All with the photographs. Another woman.
More than one story. I mean, the amount of people
I've 100 stories like that.
We're like a team, Team Kaza.
Yeah.
Because you have always set up flares, you
Casa victim support, yeah. No, I mean, the woman with the what do you call it? What do you call the pregnancy? Is an ectopic pregnancy where the baby is conceived outside the womb.
That's right. Ectopic.
She had, basically she came to me and she says, "Listen, I'm afraid I had an investigation this week. I have to go back in again next week, Thursday, basically to take the embryo away." And she says, "Could you ask the guy in Brazil, as they call them, the entities, to basically look over the shoulder of the doctor, because she says, I'm afraid that if they make a mistake that they medically something will happen." So she says, "Will you ask them to make sure that the doctor does the right thing?" I said, "Well, we'll send a fluffy guy to look over the shoulder of the doctor next Thursday." So that was fine. Next Friday came and she rang me and she says, "Guess what?" She says, "I went into hospital yesterday, same doctor, same nurse. They did a scan again to see if everything was still the same, and they found the baby was in the womb."
Wow.
And so they abandoned it, and the baby must be 15 or 16 today.
Absolutely.
I've had women with endometriosis where you can't conceive,
very, very
even in my new family here, and suddenly babies are born. And that's just about babies. Even from a spiritual point of view, I had two nuns. They were actually Irish nuns, not dressed up as penguins, just dressed up in normal clothes. Undercover nuns, probably. They came to me in the shop and they asked me about the spiritual center. And one of them says, "Well, it's like this. I have a brother and we think he's possessed. He basically stays in his room. He won't leave his room. He won't leave the house. This is going on for years. And he keeps saying, I'm possessed by the devil." And they could not deal with this guy. They tried everything. They even, with permission of the Catholic Church, brought him to a priest in Scotland. And this priest then was an appointed priest by the Catholic Church to do exorcisms, even though according to the rest of the world, that doesn't exist. But anyway, this guy was, this was a Catholic Church priest basically authorized to do exorcisms. And they brought him to this guy, to this priest, and the priest basically said he's not possessed at all. He's just nothing wrong with him spiritually, can't help you. So they came to me and asked me about Brazil. And again, I sent his picture to you. And you nailed him to the wall there, a couple of 6-inch nails in the triangle. And again, like most of them, I would forget about it. I would forget about them afterwards, and then
there's hundreds that we worked on together.
Oh, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
And the Casa is also not only a spiritual hospital, and thank you for the reminder for everyone listening as well. It's also the biggest de-obsession house in South America, because we're all carrying energies that do not serve us. They're called, obsessive spirits, and we do have obsessive thoughts. And I've seen so many, I won't even call them exorcisms in the Casa, but de-obsessions, which is basically the same thing, but not done with fire and brimstone. And, the water of the Casa certainly does play a big part in it, but done with a lot of love and prayer to the source and to certain entities that are like Dr. Augusto, this beautiful man. He said, my phalange or group of entities is not 10 or 100. It is thousands and thousands of entities of light and love here to serve you and to love you. And I will go to the depths to save one soul. So he was one of the biggest de-obsessions in the Casa, and he had people lifting them out of the hell they
Yeah.
were living in, and
Yeah.
transmuting the denser energies of these obsessors.
Oh, I have that actually experience personally.
Yes.
The removal of an obsession, or I called it voodoo. Actually, just to finish the story of the two nuns, basically after 2 weeks, she rang me. Yeah, you forgot that. She rang me and she says, "Can I ask you?" She says, "When did you present my brother's picture in the Casa?" And I said, "Well, it wasn't the first week, because the first week you always work, on yourself, and then the second week I always used to go in with pictures of others." So I said it must have been Thursday morning last week, probably, or Thursday afternoon last week. And I said, "Why?" She says, "Friday morning last week he rang me, and he said, I don't know what happened to me, but he says, I want to meet you for tea later on today in town. Number one." And he says, "Because I want to go and look for a job, and I want your help."
Wow.
She says, "That's the phone call I got the next morning." So I said,
amazing.
There you go. One thing I want to point out to people, which is very important. The thing I spoke to actually my local priest some years ago, when I had been to the Casa a few times, and again he had a problem. He had some fog in his brain, and he asked me, would I take his picture with me the next time? And I got talking to him, and I was telling him about the amazing experiences, and I said, "That job of yours, there's actually something real about it." And he laughed, and he says, "I know." I said, "But the only thing is, oh no," he said to me, he says, "You want to be very, very careful." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Listen, when we study for the priesthood," he says, "there's a lot of shit that we learn, a lot of stuff we don't talk about in general." He says, "What you've done," he says, "you discovered that the spirit world exists." He says, "You opened the front door wide open because you found it fantastic, you found it wonderful." He says, "That's a big mistake." He says, "The problem is, by opening the front door, it's like opening the front door of your house. Anybody can walk in." So he says, the spirit world is the same as us. There's good guys and bad guys and everything in between. Now, he says, if you open the door to the spirit world and you tell them all, "Come in," he says, "you're letting everybody in, including the bad ones, the evil ones." And I said, "Shit, I never thought about that." I actually never thought about that. And shortly after, now I know he was obviously a messenger, because now I know why. Shortly after, basically, I was, what I think it was a South African person. I think they use voodoo on me. Now, if you ask me today, I don't think voodoo exists. But anyway, whatever the hell they did to me, I felt depressed. Everything was dark.
Yes.
I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I wasn't happy. I was feeling depressed, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And in those days, I used to go from time to time to a very good medium here close by. She would actually tell me what was going to happen in my life, the 6 months coming, and she was absolutely never wrong. But anyway, I was with her one day. I went to her for business advice half the time. I tried to play the game.
That's why you're rich.
But basically, the last time I was with her, she says, "I see something very, very dark around you." And she says, "It scares the crap out of me." And she says, "I can't help you with it. But," she says, "I see some very, very dark things around you." And she says, "Oh, Jesus," she says, I don't even want to look at it any further." But she says, "I see that you're going to the Amazon." I said, "Well, I'm not going to the Amazon, but yeah," I said, "I'm going to Brazil." She says, "Well, whatever it is," she says, "I know you're going to see somebody that is very spiritual." And she says, "This person can help you." She says, "As far as I know, this is the only person that can help you. But," she says, "you have to ask." And I said, "Right, okay." So I had already planned to go to Brazil with Bobby a few weeks later. So I went to Brazil, and I basically asked the entity, "Will you help me with whatever problem I have?" And I gave him the note, and he just waved me on as usual, like, "Out you go, next." And I walked outside. I walked through the door outside the building, and it was like somebody switched the lights on. It was just, I stood there and I started crying, and I just could not help myself. And it was like somebody literally just switched the light on, as if that sun that was there
Wow.
Somebody just switched it on. It was an experience you can't explain to people, but basically they took away whatever bad attachment I had, what was keeping me down, and it was so powerful that basically only the entities in the Casa could take that away. And
but
that was my experience.
And you asked, so that it makes all the difference. Ask and you will receive. And also the transmutation of energy, heavier energies, is something really special here in the Casa. It still exists. It'll never go away. The portal is wide open now. So in 2025, we can still connect with this extraordinary energy that's so needed on the planet. And just to wind up, because we've been chatting for so long.
I know.
You know, this is beautiful. Talking to you is amazing because I was there with you for some of the journey, and I would never have met you and many others that are doing these podcasts and listening to these podcasts if it were not for the Casa. So I'm so grateful, and nothing but gratitude and joy. And, you know, we are all family. You know, I could sing that song, but I won't. And then, you know, bringing what we learned over the years into 2025 and moving forward. I mean, how has it helped your life to this day? And then moving forward, I mean, obviously you're in a much better place than you were. You regained your sanity.
Well, I think the main thing it did to me, I'm a very, very settled person now. In the old days, I was running and raising. I was the 7-day-a-week businessman. You know, if I made $1 million, I'd say, right, okay, that's on the way to the next one and the next one and the next one. And now I actually look at trees and say, wow, that's a nice tree. Never looked at the damn thing before. But in my daily life, I'm actually a very, very settled person now. Even when bad things happen, it doesn't bother me anymore. I mean, my van broke down there a while back, and I was told it needs a new engine. And, you know, normally I would say, oh, shit, my life is over. And now I'm kind of thinking, you know, my saying is always, in 6 months' time, we'll look back at this and we'll be laughing about it. Because every week we seem to have problems, but then a week later you have different problems, and you look back at last week's problems and you laugh about them and say, oh, in fact, I got sorted. But we have new ones. So we deal, and a lot of people go through life constantly dealing with problems. And if you just stand back and say, you know what, I don't give a shit what happens. It's fine. It's the same with money. I had no money and I worried about it. And then at one stage I said, I have to stop this worrying about the future. And I stopped worrying. I said, you know what, I'm not going to worry about the future anymore. You know, whatever happens, happens. And I found ever since, whenever I need money to pay a bill, it just seems to appear.
It's like a surrendering. You know, that's what I learned from Seven Nations of Iona. You know, surrender expectations, because we carry all this worry around, and worrying is useless. You know, why worry when you can pray, according to my beautiful friend Padre Pio. So, you know, it all works out in the end. I mean, there's nothing that can really hurt us, you know, but we are human. So, of course, we're going to stress about things. But this is a huge perspective for you.
You have to ask.
Yes.
That's the only thing. You have to ask, because that's a lot of people. Some people would say, I know you want to wind up. I'm going to go now. But
no, this is great, Bob. I mean,
this is not happening. That's not happening. And I always say that the thing is, the entities are all around us all the time. They see how, you know, we're about to cross the road and get hit by a car. They see that, but they're not allowed to interfere. You know, they see when you're making the wrong decision or take the wrong job, or resign from a job that you shouldn't have. They see all of that happening. They're not allowed to interfere, except when we ask. That's giving them permission to interfere. So I never asked them, will you make me win the lotto? I you know, obviously, but, well, actually I did. Doesn't work.
It doesn't work like that. And
there's no mechanics. There's no car mechanics up there either, because every time I fucking ask them to keep my van running, I never get any answer. So a couple of guys, if you're car mechanics, will you please die and go up there, because we need you.
Your prayers will be answered, Bob. Wait till you see. They always are. not the way we expect.
What I do with the entities of the Casa, I basically ask them, listen, guys, I give them permission. I'd say, listen, guys, will you guide me in my daily life? Will you help me making the right decision? I give you my permission to do whatever it takes to get me on the right road, to get me an income, to get my house sorted, to get my, and I just give them permission. Do whatever you can, and they will help, but you have to ask.
You see, this is a beautiful, you wouldn't have said that 20 years ago. You would have been effing and blinding, and congratulations, you didn't eff and blind too much. We only have a few beeps, which I just took a note of. Well done. It's a miracle.
Right, you can write fucking this one down as well.
Well, we're going to have to finish now and cut you off now. It's been beautiful talking to you. I really appreciate your insights because this will help a lot of people. And of course, our friendship will continue despite the cussing. And big love to you. And if you need anything, just let me know here. And I'll see you in the summer. Of course, we're going to be friends right through until we leave our bodies. We'll be like, oh my God, you're up here too, floating. You got your... Okay, Bob Roemer. Sorry, Roemer, because of my Irish accent.
Thanks for having me. It was good. Good crack. Good fun.
If we can help anybody, we will, and that's, we really need to help each other, especially now in this chaotic world. So you're a breath of fresh air, and I really appreciate you doing this podcast. And that's what it's for, to really remind people of what this divine spark is in us. And we were ignited here in the Casa. And that's why we are coming together as a group consciousness now and helping each other. 2025 and onwards and upwards, we're not getting off the planet that easy. We have work to do.
Not yet.
That 4-letter word, work, not the other one.
I know.
Love you, Bob.
Yeah. Love you too. Talk to you soon.
We'll be talking soon. Yeah, and I'm still trying to work out all of this. Great. I'm just going to sign off now.
Okay.
Loads of love.
Bye.
Bye.